So the questionnaire, I kind of wrote a little one for y'all. I did this for my PhD programs. My recommender said it was super helpful. I had students submit a different version of a questionnaire, but somewhat similar. And so that was also really helpful to me. And so here, important information. Applying through 2 different application portals would be very important to a teacher who's submitting a recommendation letter for you. Your first deadline. So I need to get this done well before this date. And then here, if applying for scholarships, or like if you're applying for also a different scholarship that has a different way of submitting and a different deadline, also including that information is really important. So the teacher knows, okay, I submitted to the Common App, submitted to Applied Acceptance or whatever. Now I also have this other thing that I have to do for the student. Oh, this was left over, sorry. Okay, so I have over here like a little table of contents. You got your goal and your general idea. This is where we talk a lot about in CollegeVine, how you can have your admissions theme, like your one sentence, this is who you are, this is the role you'll play in the college community, something like that. And so here I have just an example of like, what that could look like, an admissions theme. And an overall goal, like I want to become this profession. College will help me to do that because, and that gives a teacher a really solid basis to start. Like the purpose of this recommendation letter is for the student to get into college so that they can have this goal. And so for some of my students, I want to become someone with a highly professional job, such as a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, whatever. College will help me do this because it gives me rigorous classes. It'll help me get that bachelor's degree that I need to apply for those jobs. Ultimately, it has some of my students, right, especially coming from like a Title I school, ultimately I want to be able to give back to my families or buy my parents a house or a car or whatever. And so like that could be really helpful for the teacher to ground themselves in that statement and say, okay, this whole recommendation letter is about getting being one part of getting this kid to do this thing with their lives. Okay, pick 3 traits you want your teacher to emphasize in the letter. Write 1 story per trait. Stories are really powerful. The more a teacher can write a little story in your recommendation letter, the better. I wrote 1 recommendation letter for a student. They were talking about a difficult experience they had while working. So they were working during a busy holiday at a busy restaurant, and they were talking about how they were being collaborative. They were talking about how they were taking the initiative. Like these were all things I could talk about. I talked with William, and he told me about this one day, and so like that could be, well, it's like a fake name or whatever, but like that could be really important in writing a good recommendation letter. I like asking this question to students. I feel like it really shows like who they are and kind of that empathy that they may have, hopefully do have. And so that, what do you do to help others? And so this is a really good question, very broad question. I would also include like a story here. So just, as I'm saying, like this is a lot of work, but take the time to do that work and you'll get a really good recommendation out of it. What do you care about? What's a problem you like to solve? What are your soft skills? And describe each involvement, each extracurricular activity. If I'm talking about how a student is a leader, I need to be able to cite examples. And so citing examples from their extracurriculars and having a story for each extracurricular can be really important, and me being able to write a strong letter of recommendation. Here, what does your academic performance look like over the course of high school? What changes occurred? Be honest, like difficult courses, how do they change you for the better? You failed a course, that's okay. What did you learn from it? Like I've written letters for students who have failed courses before, but what I focus on is, okay, so so-and-so had a rough semester this semester. But in response to it, they did this, and that shows like this student is able to recover from failure. And that's a really important and very believable thing, coming from a teacher saying that about a student, which is great. So if this is specific to whichever teacher you're asking a letter from, but what part of your class do they enjoy and why? So the teacher could write, especially if it's been a year, a few months or 2 years, saying, oh, you know what, so-and-so, like Aaron did really like that part of my course. And actually I saw these skills and how he acted like during this particular project that I can write about in a recommendation letter. Asking like, how did you challenge yourself? And so what did you do? Like, did you ask the teacher for extra work? That is a beautiful thing that you can do. And not just like extra work, like, give me another worksheet, but like, hey, can I go further in this project? I know that we're only supposed to read like 1 book, but what if I read a commentary on that 1 book? Like, is that something I can do? Or coming into tutorials and saying, hey, I read this commentary, Miss Alina, I'd really like to talk about this with you. Ultimately teachers and good teachers especially, they really love learning. And so they're like, yeah, like let's learn together. Like that is the whole point of education. And I've had some of the best points of being a teacher is when students have asked to challenge themselves more. Hey, can I have more difficult material? Absolutely. Here's an activity, here's an article, read it, tell me what you learned, let's have a discussion. Another strong point for a recommendation letter. Describe your home life. This is a really important question. If you have a difficult home life, and there's so many situations that could be happening, like a parent dies, your parents are divorced, and and you have to take care of your siblings, especially for students who are coming from low income or first generation backgrounds. Be honest about your home life and describe that on, if you're just however your home life looks, be honest about that and talk about that in your recommendation letter. Things such as taking care of your siblings can be a strength. It can show that you have leadership skills. It can show that you have immense responsibility. I've had students before they've had parents divorce or a parent die or something happen, and as a result they've had to take over more responsibilities at home. And so taking care of your grandmother is like a really beautiful and sometimes difficult thing, especially as someone who's taken care of my grandmother before when she's sick or she has her hip broken or whatever. And so that is something that those types of experiences show characteristics that you can write about in a recommendation letter. Okay, work experience looks like also really important. Can give a teacher a lot of context, like, oh, so and so really struggled with grades that semester, but that semester they were working 40 hours a week. I mean, I've had students who are literally working full-time jobs as they're applying because they're just working all the time after school and they're working on the weekends and everything. And sometimes and it's just, really difficult. And so that is something you can talk about. Have you ever had to work to support your family? Describe that. And then just add, is there anything else you'd like to add? Is there anything else you'd like that teacher to possibly add on a recommendation letter? Like that can be something that's important. Okay, I would have if you have a resume, I mean, I know you already have this, but just for honors and awards and other things, you can link a resume here as well as your Common App essay. And sometimes reading Common App essays, I've had insights about students that I develop further on a recommendation letter, which can be a really nice tie between the recommendation letter, the Common App essay, lends more legitimacy to the Common App essay and everything. And then also just kind of can make your application look a little bit more coherent, which can be great.
Some teachers are going to have a ton of students, 150, right? I mean, that's a huge number. And even if a teacher has, great relationships with a lot of those students, that their memory is not perfect, right? Yeah. So they're going to need those refreshers, especially because sometimes memory works on this recall basis where it's they might not be able to, say something off the top of the head about their student, but if they see it on paper, they'll be like, yes, I remember we talked about that. And yes, I can write this. So
yeah. And students are like, remember that one time? You're like, no, because I mean, as a teacher, I don't think students realize you're making literally so many decisions all the time. You're looking at the classroom, you're this person AirPods out, this person feet on the floor, and you're also this problem, okay, this person needs something else. You're always making all these decisions, so you're not remembering every single interaction or every single moment, because while a student might be doing one thing in class, you're literally trying to do 30 40 different things with all your different students, and then just how the technology is working and everything. So yeah, so just so be explicit and be thoughtful about how you're writing those moments out on the recommendation letter, because that could trigger something in the teachers to be like, oh yeah, that moment, okay, I remember, or they don't remember as much, but your description is really helpful in giving them that basis to write about on the rec letter.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
little rant about how much teachers have to do, but
it's so important to keep in mind. I mean, it really is. As a student, you don't quite see it. I mean, I've done some tutoring and teaching. I didn't realize it either till I started. So
yeah, so much.